Midnight at the attic, and I wasn't alone. The attic smelled of cedar and old summers. I had told myself it would be simple. A few boxes, a photograph, a brass key that Aunt Marin had tucked into my palm the week before she died. Midnight arrived like a punctuation mark. The house hummed with its own memory. I switched on a single lamp, and the world shrank to a circle of light, the rest a softened, listening dark. That hush made every little creak articulate, as if the room were clearing its throat to speak. I had expected boxes and decrepit ribbons, but the attic was arranged like a room waiting to be used. A rocking horse faced the round window, its paint soft and yellowed. The mantel clock sat on a crate, hands frozen at midnight. Someone had set it there with care. On the trunk, a brass key lay with the deliberate placelessness of an offering. I reached for it, and the hair along the back of my neck tingled in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. I tried to catalog what I felt grief folded into curiosity, a pressure that made the air taste like the first page of a book. The notebook felt heavy in my bag, the pen heavier. I scribbled one line and then another, as if writing might stake a corner against whatever was listening. Somewhere above, the house breathed, a long, low exhale followed by a softer inhale. A floorboard near the window echoed, small and precise, the pattern of footsteps that had no owner. I told myself it was rats, or the pipes, or the simple settling of a house that had outlived its owners. Still, the sounds arrived with intent. A soft scuff after I stood, a careful realignment of something heavy. Once, a small white envelope slid from the trunk's edge and stopped at my boot like an animal interrupted. It bore Aunt Marin's handwriting, a neat dark slope that spelled only tonight. No punctuation, no signature. My skin tightened into a watchful shape. I considered leaving the attic for a moment, the rational, sensible part of me filing this all under sorrow-induced fancy. But curiosity is a patient animal. I unfolded the envelope and found a single clipped sentence. You listen well. There was no name. The line felt like a finger tapping the underside of the house, asking whether I would answer. I read the words aloud without thinking, and my voice sounded unfamiliar beneath the rafters, like a new instrument in an old orchestra. Answering, even to paper, had consequences. The tower of boxes behind me seemed to lean in. I set the brass key aside and rose slowly to look into the shadowed corner where the rafters joined. For a moment, nothing was there but a depth that swallowed the lamp. Then, just a shade of movement, like the curtain of a far window in wind. I felt suddenly, unpleasantly, like an intruder in a place where someone had been tidying up after me. I started a recorder on impulse, small, practical, a way to collect evidence and keep my own voice nearby. The red light blinked loyal. I spoke into it, cataloging the objects, the time, my own foolishness. When I let silence fall, the attic answered with a pattern. A slow, deliberate tap 3 times. Wait, tap twice, pause. It was a rhythm I felt more than heard, as if someone were counting syllables in the rafters, rehearsing an old litany for an audience of dust. The ideas that make sense, animals, weather, the house's bones, began to fray. The taps answered only when I pressed pause on the recorder, like a companion in a call-and-response game. I held the pen like a talisman, then set it down. The rocking horse rocked. It was a single, small motion, almost a cough of movement, as if someone had exhaled too sharply and the world shifted in response. The horse stopped, and the air filled with the scent of lavender, as if the attic had been dressed in Aunt Marin's, sent to make introductions civil. I told the recorder, almost pleading, that I meant no harm. My voice sounded smaller when recorded, smaller under the beams. The tape captured a sound that wasn't mine at first, a low sorting noise, like paper being shuffled, and then a breathing that matched the rhythm of the house, but felt too attentive. It curved around my words, punctuating them with long, unhurried spaces. It did not interrupt, it annotated. It had manners and the patience of something that had been waiting a long time. There were letters, packs I had not opened, stacked like unread chapters. I discovered a folded photograph tucked in the trunk, edges softened by handling, showing Aunt Marin young and laughing, a blur of sun behind her. Someone had written a single word on the back, neat and centered. Listen. The imperative felt less like advice than a continuing instruction. I pressed the photograph to my chest, and for a few seconds believed I could hear two voices overlapping. My aunt's memory and something answering from between the beams. I tried to leave the attic once, footsteps committed to the stairs, but the stairwell replied in a way that made leaving indecently complicated. The doorknob clicked a hello, and then thought better of it. My hand hovered, and the house rearranged its noises like a host returning to a conversation. I realized with a hollow clarity that the attic had a grammar I did not know. It expected certain cadences, certain small rites: put the key down, speak your name, fold the sleeves of doubt. And so I folded my breath into the pattern it set. I gave my name aloud because the attic felt polite at first. When I said Evelyn, the rafters answered not with a name, but with a sequence of 3 taps that matched the cadence of my syllables. It was uncanny, like hearing an echo that knows the language of your pauses. The recorder caught a fragment of another sound beneath it, a low humming that hinted at a melody, incomplete, as if someone remembered a lullaby, only in parts. The incompleteness made it cling around me like a promise. Time grew elastic. Minutes folded into each other until midnight felt like a suggestion rather than a fact. I found myself opening the trunk again and again, each time uncovering the same objects, but arranged slightly differently, the clock relocated by inches, a ribbon smoothed as if someone passed a hand across it. Whoever or whatever kept this place tidy had a slow patience like moss. It rearranged details, not to frighten, but to ensure I noticed, to keep me awake enough to listen. A pattern emerged over the hours, noises as punctuation, objects as sentences. When I placed the brass key upon the trunk and whispered a meaningless confession about forgetting to call a friend, the attic answered with a slow, approving creak. When I admitted aloud a petty vanity, how I feared being ordinary, the rocking horse gave a small, self-contained shake, like a headshake discreetly offered. The house listened, but did not judge, it reflected, and the reflections were never flattering. At one point, the recorder played back a voice I had not spoken, fragile and thin, half a syllable like a name on the edge of hearing. I rewound and listened until my eyes blurred. The waveform showed a spike where nothing I remembered had been said. I felt the attic lean in with something like satisfaction, as if it had placed another pebble in my pocket to weigh decisions down. That night, the boundary between what belonged to me and what was kept here blurred. The attic stored more than objects. I found a list folded in the notebook in a hand that was not mine, and not quite Aunt Marin's either. Small requests, simple tasks: listen when called, place the key where you found it, say your name out loud, leave a window half open. The final line read, "Leave willing, not frightened." The writing had a practiced tenderness, as if teaching someone to leave the world politely. The instructions struck me like a map left inside a pocket. Someone had traced the exits for me in case I needed them. I debated leaving then, moments of daylight logic where I pictured myself walking away and never returning. But leaving felt like choosing ignorance. I wanted to keep one more cassette on the recorder, one more question for the rafters. I tucked the key into my pocket, as if an offering might be better kept than given, and said aloud that I would come back tomorrow. The attic replied with a single, long exhale that could have been acceptance or amusement. It did not insist I stay. I left down the stairs into sleeping rooms and streets, and a sky that knew nothing of waiting rafters. Yet the moment I reached the sidewalk, the world sharpened into impossible detail: distant dogs, a neighbor's porch light, like someone had polished the ordinary to help me forget the attic's grammar. Behind me, the house kept its windows dark. I told myself the night had been a private performance, a grief playing host to pattern, and that would be the story I used later, folded into conversation. That night, in my bed, I played the recorder again, an old superstition. Beneath my voice and the recorded taps was something else, quiet and neat. A soft folding sound and the rustle of a page being turned. Then, impossibly, my own voice, muffled and echoing, not from the recorder but from my ceiling, as if the attic had kept a copy and was humming it back. I lay awake feeling observed, flattered, and oddly companioned. It left a question that would not settle. Was the attic remembering me, or had I become part of its memory? Weeks later, I returned once more to the attic, this time carrying a thermos and an intention to stay until dawn. The room received me like a host re-seeing an old friend. I set the brass key atop the trunk and spoke into the dark with a steadier voice. The attic answered, but not in the same patterns. It hummed a long, untranslatable chord and let silence fall like curtains. In that silence, I realized the thing in the rafters wasn't waiting for me to leave or stay. It was waiting for me to decide whether my curiosity could be a companion.